Hello, everybody. I am your host, Scott, coming to you once again from Chicago.
Your family are going to get lonely with you being there for so long, Scott. I'm Andy, coming to you from the United Kingdom again.
Good to see you, Andy, and welcome everybody back to Tea and Timbits, a podcast on global development, global perspectives on business development to help you prosper.
I was excited about the other version of the
Say
podcast as
say
well
that
there.
enough times fast, yeah. Today we are going to talk about knowing your customer and the value of personas and audience uh, definitions.
Mhm.
Boy, I said this all a lot easier when I was prepping. Um, we shall continue. Roll forward, Andy. So before we get into that topic, what's the reflection that you wanted to share with everybody today?
Well, funnily enough, it's about being consistent in messaging. And
And having a co-host that can talk properly.
that's all right. You're used to not having one that can do that, so it makes a change. uh, no, what it was is it was a story I had. I had like the 10th or 15th meeting with
Mm,
CEO of this big company, and we were about to do a uh, introducing a sales changing program, I suppose, for a new team. We've been doing it for a little while with other teams and so on. And he was saying to me, he says, I'm getting quite tired of just saying the same thing over and over and over again.
mm.
And he's like, oh, can't I just mix it up, or change the messaging and take a different approach towards this? And I said, no, that's the last thing that
I
you should
already
do.
loved
you,
this
you
story.
need to make sure that you are repeatedly saying the same thing all the time. No matter what
Yes.
communication you're having, you're saying exactly the same thing. You are giving that exact same message every single time. Not necessarily the same way, of course, because then that would get boring. But even though you may feel that you're telling the same story every time, you will have detractors, you will have people who are a little bit slower, you will have people who are a little bit confused, you will have people who are entrenched in their way. But if they keep hearing you communicating the same message in different ways on different platforms, but it's consistent and the message is ultimately the same, you are going to get a much, much better buy-in to that message. And people are going to follow you, they're going to respect you, they're going to understand what you stand for. And it's going to make sure that you're getting the best value out of the training that we're doing, that you're going to get the best value out of your teams, you're going to get the best value out of your business, and everybody's going to know exactly what you stand for.
Love it.
And it was a message that I thought was really important because I sort of get stuck in just thinking that everybody knows this stuff and everybody's already
Yeah.
comfortable with that. And when it's new, people can feel a little bit uncomfortable. It's like, oh, well, why do I keep saying the same thing? Why do I have to
Hmm.
keep
Hmm.
repeating myself? Aren't people going to think I'm stupid because I'm just keep saying the same thing? Like, no, actually, it's the opposite. Funnily
Yep.
enough.
Yep.
So
So
yeah.
I love that. The reason that I'm in Chicago is because I'm at a show, that trade show conference that we are going to sponsor in the fall. So
Oh,
same show.
okay.
This one's in Chicago. The one that we're going to be doing is going to be in Florida. So Chicago is literally down the street from Toronto, quote unquote, by
Hmm.
North American standards. So quick flight, checking it out to just get a better sense of how everything runs. So you talk about messaging and the importance of
Hmm.
saying the same thing, and I couldn't agree more. But I also appreciate the fact that you need to make sure that you are differentiating yourself. And so
Yeah.
once you figure that out, don't deviate, right? Because you've only got so many touch points with each individual person in your audience, and that will come to our topic as well in a minute. But one of the things that I did, I don't know if you can see that. Do you see that? That on my phone here is the list. I went around the trade show floor when everybody else was
Hmm.
in a session, and I wrote down the tagline that every single booth had on
Oh,
their banner. And
yeah.
I'm going to reflect on so that I can make sure, one, I don't want to be so different that it's like, who are these guys and why are they even here?
Mm.
At the same time, it was very quickly obvious to me that everybody's saying the same thing as each other. So you want to try and make sure that you're differentiating yourselves, and then I also
Yeah.
lean into saying that repeatedly so that everybody identifies that as your message.
So are you thinking then, and I know we're off topic, but are you thinking then that you are changing your message, or you're going to adapt it for?
Good question. I think that I've already made some notes about like, well, wait a minute, our message is, set, and we're a full service digital experience agency that helps you prosper and grow. And but that's what a lot of other people were saying, like at the very
Hmm.
surface level. So how can I refine it? How can I, and our messaging and you know brand identity is robust, and it's got some different themes that are already baked into it that I just need to go, all right, which element do I emphasize, and which
Okay.
particular storyline in this market for this audience do I want to come forward with so that I can distinguish and differentiate myself. So no, I don't want to change the messaging. I just want to appreciate the fact that I'm in a room of peers and market that's appropriate, and other people in the market that would be saying the same thing, but
Hmm.
I want to do it in a way that still gets people a bit more curious to come over and talk to us, or realize that, well, I'm not just the same as the booth beside me.
Yeah. So it's about saying the same thing, but saying it in a way that appeals more relevant to that particular
Yeah,
market and
yeah.
audience
Just
that you're talking to.
shifting
Yeah,
some
of course.
wording,
Yeah.
emphasizing one particular processor strength or yeah, solution over another one that's uh, more distinguished.
Hmm. Very good. Thank you very much. What are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about knowing your customer, and I didn't actually mean for it to segue by telling that story and piggybacking on yours, but what we're going to get into here is why it's important to formalize that customer definition. And
Mhm.
we've talked, I think, before about personas and audience segments, and some people call this an ideal customer profile. But I wanted to spend some time on that just to make sure that the value and the importance is articulated from a very comprehensive perspective of how
Mhm.
it impacts the entire business, not just the marketing desk. So is this something that you have seen executed well, poorly? What's been sort of your experience with the way that companies have formalized, articulated, and leverage those customer definitions?
In general, I find that it's something that people don't do.
At all.
Um, no, I think people have something in their mind. They know
Right,
roughly in
right.
their mind what their ideal customer is like, what they're looking for, but there's no formalized definition. There's no, So for example, if a company receives an unsolicited request for quote or
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
RFQ, very often companies will go, "Oh, exciting! We don't know this company, or
Yeah,
we're not competing on that market. That will be really fun. Let's put all of our resources into it and let's do it."
yeah,
But the reality is, if you don't have a defined, customer avatar or whatever terminology you wish to use,
yep.
it's going to be very difficult to know, is this actually something that is worthwhile pursuing? Is it
Mm-hmm.
going to be the relevant customer? Is it that we don't know this company and we didn't know they were going to send out this RFQ because they're not actually relevant for us? Should we really be putting all of our resources into responding to this? Should we be focusing on this? And also for the sales team as well, to be proactive and reaching out to people, they need to know who those people should be, what they should look like, what sort of, what role do they have in a business, what sort of things are they interested in, what sort of budgets are they responsible for, what are their goals, what are their targets, what are the challenges that they're
Yep.
facing. Being very, very, very clear about all of that is something that is an absolute foundation and should be clearly documented, so anyone coming into that company knows
Yes.
exactly who to go for, what to do and how to do it. And that then goes across into marketing, into all other customer approaches externally as well, because then you have your target customer and that's who you focus on. And anyone else coming in, if they don't fit it within that, then you don't put your resources into it.
Yes. And so the point you just made there is a critical one about it being documented and formalized. It is
Yes,
not
yeah.
enough to sort of talk about the fact and 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 convince yourself that everybody must understand who our
Mm,
target is. And it's not enough to say our target is mid-sized businesses with 50 to 150 employees. That doesn't count either. um, you can have several of these definitions that are all similar, but slightly different. Um, because you might fit very nicely into that size of client, 50 to 150 people working at the business, but there are companies that have a market cap of $10 billion with that number of people, and there are some that are in the millions.
yeah,
And
that's right.
so there might be a reason for that. Maybe you're a software company, you're selling licenses, and that's the sweet spot. But you might need to say, well, wait a minute, in this industry it looks like this, but in this industry it looks like this, and it's a
Mm,
slightly different adjustment, but you're going after the same kind of qualities that you can find, that your sort of head count it infers that you're expecting, which I think is pretty important. So get beyond. A lot of people do define it that way, like revenue or head count or something like that, or industry specific. But I think you want to make sure that you're articulating these definitions in terms of character and posture and culture, because I
oh,
think that
culture's a good one. Culture's a good one.
yeah,
And are you saying that, because I hadn't thought about that before, but that's actually quite good. Are you saying that it should be companies who have certain values that are reflected in your business,
absolutely.
or that they have a certain approach to the market? But you're saying
Absolutely.
values. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You might want to make sure that somebody is generally, if you're a service provider, that they have a culture of collaboration and communication. You want to
Hmm.
understand what
Okay.
they do in order to manage their own team, and in that process of discovery, you want to try and simulate a little bit of what the interactions are going to be like when the project is being delivered.
Mm.
If it's a product situation, you want to make sure that, if you can, how do they treat sort of delivery and returns and maintenance and
Okay.
things like
Yeah.
that. What are some of the other you know products or procurement processes that that you can sort of get a glimpse into? um, uh, it can be almost more important, in a lot of cases, to try to evaluate for that. Now, larger companies, I think they care less about this
Hmm.
than smaller ones, because it can have such a detrimental impact on a smaller
Yeah.
business if you don't get a good culture fit. But I think for larger companies as well, you get a chance to thrive just as much if you can make sure that there's stronger cultural alignment. I also think that it behooves you to do an analysis on existing clients to say, if we
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
to if we were to talk to them again brand new, would we want them as a client? And
Mm.
which ones are helping us accelerate our own business, not just from a revenue perspective, from a total growth perspective, however you want to define that for yourselves, and which ones are holding us back, which ones
Yes.
are
Mm.
a
Yeah.
drain on our resources, not just our costs, but our staff, and there's friction in the process, and all that kind of stuff, and
Mm.
then use that to iterate on those customer definitions as well.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Is have a look at your existing customer base. Who are your top performing customers and why?
Yeah.
Who are the ones that you feel more closely aligned with, more comfortable working with, and which ones are not? And then that's definitely a good foundation for building this customer platform. What I had as a question for you was, how do you recommend documenting this? Because I think, just having a written document going, this is our best customer, isn't something that's going to get used as often as maybe having a checklist. Does this customer meet this criteria? But
Yeah.
again, I think that having a checklist that does this customer meet this criteria, yes, no, is often too restrictive as well. So,
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the best sort of middle ground to do this, and I don't have the answer for that. And I was wondering if you had any tips.
Well, as a matter of fact, I do. Since this
Okay,
is
it
actually
wasn't a leading question, and we didn't
a
prepare that.
process
So.
that we take our clients through. So without turning it into a sales pitch, I think that there's a nuance and a difference, and I'm trying to avoid getting into what it means to create an ideal customer profile versus a marketing persona. Those are two very different things, and
Okay.
but we have both. And an ideal customer profile is a little bit more of that rote description of, it's this type of company, it's this type of industry, it's this amount of budget, it is this sort of approach to the process and vision for the future. And an ideal customer is described that way, and it's very much compared against where we found success before. But that definition helps us sort of focus our sales efforts and prioritize energy and resources in a very specific sort of sales planning exercise. But that is different from a persona that we develop. You use the word avatar. I think some people use those terms interchangeably. A persona is an actual fictional person that you create. You give them a name, you create a picture, you find one that represents them, you write them up as a hypothetical biography. They went to this school, they live in this neighborhood, they have this kind of daily life. It starts at 7 a.m., it ends at 10 p.m. They do these kinds of things. They have these values, these motivations, these fears, these hesitations. They have these skills. They're weak in these areas. They like these brands. They don't like those ones, so that you can build empathy within your business for who you want to be able who you expect to be working with and supporting.
I really like that. I
Um,
think it's a great way, then, of course, of being able to identify, articulate, and relate to the challenges that they face, the things that they're focused on, their motivations, and so on. Because I think for especially salespeople, when they're reaching out to try and talk to someone, if they know that this is the type of person, and they can really see that person, they they kind of know that person,
yeah,
they're someone they feel familiar with, it's going to be much easier to identify, is the person I'm talking to on the phone, or meeting at this event, are they that type of person? And if they are, then you very quickly understand their challenges, and you can talk to them in a much more relatable way, and it allows you to have a much more professional conversation. You feel more confident to have that conversation. You have more confidence to pick up the telephone and talk to people, because you feel genuinely that you're there to help them, to provide a service,
yeah,
which is exactly what you're supposed to be doing anyway. But I think a lot of people still feel like, oh, I'm trying to manipulate them, or I'm trying to sell them something, I'm trying to get them to do something they don't want to do.
right.
And that's not the case. And once you have this customer persona,
Hmm.
and you can see that person and you can relate to that person, you understand that person, it allows you to then really, really feel confident that you're doing something of value, and you're bringing them something of
Yeah.
value, and they're a real person, and you feel much more comfortable with it. I really like that. That's very good.
So I'm going through this on a particular project where
Okay.
we did a very rough write up of this persona at the beginning of the project, and there was a good
Mm.
alignment. They're like, yep, that's the right kind of person that we want to be talking to. And then we moved on into architecture planning, and we're into content development right now. And as we're writing up the content, there's a little bit more refinement of that initial persona that's happened. So wait a minute, you're actually writing something now that is going to speak to that particular persona. And as everybody's reviewing what's been written, there's some feedback coming forward that goes,
Mm.
no, I get that what's been written is for that person, but now I think, wait a minute, it needs to be articulated differently. And I actually think
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
means we need to refine that initial persona. Now, you don't want to be, that's not your get out of jail free card. That's not like every time you see a new opportunity, that means you need to change your persona to match it.
Mm.
But you need to make sure that these things do evolve properly in the right direction, and they aren't too rigid.
Very interesting episode. Thank you very much, Scott. I really enjoyed that conversation. I know I got a lot out of it, and I hope our listeners do too. But where
Indeed.
can people get in touch to find out more about this,
Yes.
persona and development of the target?
Well, we do have some resources over at Flywheel. Find us on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to get lots of those kinds of workshop tips. We've got a library of them, and as well as some templates for that. And of course, if you want to reach out to us here at Tea and Timbits, please go to teaandtimbits.com. And we will look forward to our next conversation, Andy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott, and enjoy your trip back to see your family.
Thank you.